Take a deep breath. God is here.
Father, in this quiet moment where the world finally loosens its grip, I come before you with the trembling places of the heart, the ones anxiety tightens until breathing feels like lifting a mountain. And I ask that your presence settle over us like a soft dusk, calming the restless sky. Because when fear curls itself around the mind and tightens its hold, we need a love gentle enough to soothe but strong enough to steady. So draw near to the one listening now, the one whose thoughts race faster than they can speak, whose chest feels heavy with unspoken worry, whose emotions rise like tides they can't predict, and remind them that even in the storm inside their ribs, you step toward them with peace that does not shake. Let them feel you beside them, close enough to quiet what panic tries to magnify. And if in this very moment their heart feels a tender pull to rest in you, let them lean into that small, sacred warmth, because here, in the hush of your presence, is where trembling souls learn to breathe again. Father, as we move deeper into this sacred stillness, let the anxious heart begin to loosen its grip on the fears it has carried for far too long, because anxiety often whispers that everything depends on our fragile strength. Yet your voice enters like a gentle counter-melody, reminding us that we are held by hands far steadier than our own. So breathe softly over the one listening now, quieting the noise inside their mind, easing the pressure that has tightened around their thoughts, and let them sense that even if they cannot control the storm, they are not facing it alone. For you walk beside them with a peace that does not wait for circumstances to change before it begins its healing work. And if in this tender moment they feel a subtle urge to release even a fraction of what they've been carrying, let them follow that gentle nudge, because every burden surrendered becomes a doorway through which your calm can enter the deepest chambers of their soul. Father, as this moment unfolds like a slow and quiet dawn, let the heart that has been living in a constant state of alert find a place of rest in you, because anxiety trains the soul to expect danger even where there is none, turning ordinary moments into heavy shadows. But your presence arrives like a soft light, dissolving the darkness that fear paints over the mind. So draw near to the one listening, the one whose thoughts loop endlessly, whose worries stack upon each other until they can no longer tell where one ends and the next begins, and wrap them in a stillness that reminds their spirit of its true home in you. And if they feel, even faintly, a gentle stirring inside to trust your calm more than their fear, let them respond to that fragile sense of hope, because in that quiet surrender, your peace begins stitching together every frayed edge the anxiety has torn within them. Father, as we step further into this unfolding sanctuary of quiet, let every anxious thought that has circled the mind like restless wings begin to settle under the weight of your gentleness, because when anxiety tightens its grip, it convinces the heart that it must carry everything alone. Yet here in your presence we remember that nothing is too heavy for the hands that shaped galaxies. So draw close to the one listening now, the one whose nights have been long and whose breath has been shallow, whose fears rise without warning like sudden waves, and let your calm move through them like a warm tide, softening the inner tension that has been stretched too thin for too long. Let them feel you near enough to steady their trembling places, near enough to lift the weight they never knew how to set down, near enough to whisper that they are not failing simply because they are tired. And if in this tender hush they sense a quiet longing to rest in you, let them lean gently into that pull, because every moment their spirit moves toward your peace becomes a place where anxiety loses its voice and the soul begins to breathe again. Father, as we journey deeper into this quiet where your presence becomes almost tangible, let the heart that has lived under the pressure of constant worry feel the first soft signs of release, because anxiety often builds invisible walls around the spirit, trapping the mind in what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Yet your gentleness enters like a warm light slipping through the cracks, dissolving the illusions of fear one breath at a time. So reach the one listening now, the one who wakes already tired, who carries battles no one knows, who tries to stay strong even when their strength has long run out, and wrap them in a calm that reaches farther than their thoughts can wander. A calm that speaks softly into the places where their fear is loudest. Remind them that they are allowed to pause, allowed to breathe, allowed to rest in arms that never grow weary. And if in this moment something within them feels a tender pull to place even a fraction of their anxiety into your hands, let them respond to that gentle stirring, because every small surrender becomes a seed of peace planting itself deep within the soil of their soul, preparing the heart for healing only you can give. Father, as this quiet deepens and begins to feel like a shelter built from your own breath, let the anxious heart sense that it is safe here, safe to loosen its guard, safe to let the weight it has carried for too long begin to soften under the glow of your nearness. Because anxiety often convinces the soul that danger is always waiting just beyond the next moment. Yet your presence reveals a truth far stronger than fear, that we are held, protected, and surrounded by a peace greater than anything rising within us. So draw close to the one listening now, the one whose mind runs faster than their body can keep up, whose emotions swell without warning, whose spirit feels stretched thin from battles they never wanted to fight, and let your calm move through them like quiet water filling every dry place. Remind them that they are allowed to rest, allowed to be human, allowed to lean into a love that holds without judgment. And if in this gentle hush they feel a faint urge to trust you more than the storm inside them, let them follow that whispering pull, because each small step toward your presence becomes a widening doorway where fear loosens its grip and the soul relearns the rhythm of peace. Father, as we move even further into this sanctuary of quiet, where your peace begins to take shape within us, let every anxious thought that once rose like sharp winds start to lose its strength beneath the weight of your gentleness. Because when anxiety coils itself around the heart, it tricks the mind into believing that safety is impossible and calm is out of reach. Yet your presence leans in like a soft dawn, reminding us that no storm lasts forever when you are near. So touch the one listening now, the one who feels their heartbeat quicken without warning, whose chest tightens beneath invisible burdens, whose soul has been carrying an exhaustion they cannot explain, and breathe into them a calm that settles deeper than emotion, deeper than thought, deeper than the trembling places that fear has tried to claim. Let them feel you as close as breath, steadying their pulse, softening their inner storms, lifting the pressure that has sat too long inside their ribs. And if in this quiet moment, a fragile longing awakens within them to rest in your strength instead of their own, let them respond to that tender stirring, because every time they lean toward you, anxiety loosens one more thread, and the heart begins to remember what peace feels like. Father, as we continue moving through this quiet path where your presence softens every harsh edge within us, let the anxious heart begin to recognize that it does not have to outrun its fears to be safe, because safety is not the absence of storms, but the certainty of being held by you in the middle of them. So draw especially near to the one listening, the one whose thoughts tighten without warning, whose emotions surge like waves that rise faster than they can steady themselves, the one who has spent too many nights trying to calm their mind by sheer will, only to feel it slipping beyond their grasp, and wrap them now in a peace that settles over their chest, like a warm covering after a long and trembling journey. Let your presence speak into the tension beneath their ribs, into the heaviness sitting behind their breath, into the panic that sometimes builds for no clear reason at all, and remind them that they are not broken for feeling this way. They are simply human and deeply loved. And if in this sacred hush they feel a gentle desire rising within to place one more anxious fragment into your hands, let them follow that tender pull, because every fear released becomes another open space where your calm can take root and begin its healing work. Father, as we step deeper into this unfolding quiet where your presence feels like a soft light warming the cold corners of the soul, Let the anxious heart begin to understand that it is not weak for trembling, nor flawed for feeling overwhelmed, because even the strongest spirits grow tired when they carry storms inside their chest for too long. Yet you come not to judge the trembling, but to steady it with compassion. So draw especially near to the one listening now, the one who hides their shaking behind practiced smiles, who holds themselves together in daylight only to unravel in silence, who fears that if they stop holding everything up, everything will fall apart and cover them with a calm that reaches farther than their fear can stretch. Let your peace move through their thoughts like a slow and gentle tide, softening the tightness in their breath, easing the pressure behind their heartbeat, lifting the invisible weight that is pressed on them day after day. And if, in this delicate stillness, they feel even the faintest longing to let go of one more thing they've carried alone, let them lean into that quiet pull, because each small release draws them further into the truth that they were never meant to battle anxiety without the shelter of your love surrounding them. Father, as we walk further into this tender stillness where your presence feels like a gentle hand resting over a trembling heart, let the anxious spirit begin to sense that peace is not a distant dream reserved for the strong, but a gift offered even to those who shake beneath the weight of their own thoughts, because you do not require perfection to pour calm over a soul. You simply require openness. So draw near to the one listening now, the one whose worries gather faster than they can quiet them, whose mind spins in circles searching for control, whose chest tightens as though fear were threading itself into their very breath, and let your nearness begin loosening every knot anxiety has tied within them. Let your calm spread slowly through their inner world like warmth moving through cold rooms, softening the tension, quieting the noise, easing the pressure they have carried without rest, and remind them gently that they do not have to solve everything to breathe again. They only need to lean into the one who already knows the path ahead. And if in this moment they feel a fragile stirring to surrender even a little more of what has overwhelmed them, let them follow that quiet pull, because each step toward your peace becomes another place where fear loses its authority and the heart discovers the possibility of rest. Father, as we sink deeper into this sacred quiet where your presence wraps itself around every trembling place within us, let the anxious heart begin to understand that it is not abandoned in its struggle, because even when fear rises like a sudden storm inside the chest, you move closer, not farther, drawing near with a tenderness that steadies what panic tries to shake. So reach now, the one listening, the one who feels their thoughts tightening like closed fists, the one who wakes with tension already waiting beneath their ribs, the one who tries to stay calm while the mind insists on imagining every possible danger, and breathe over them a peace that sinks deeper than logic, deeper than emotion, deeper than the very places where worry takes root. Let your calm settle over them like a covering of warm light, softening the fear that once felt immovable, slowing the rush of thoughts that once felt unstoppable, lifting the invisible weight that once felt unmanageable. And if in this stillness they sense even a small longing to place their anxious heartbeat into your hands, let them follow that gentle pull, because every inch of surrender becomes another corner of the soul where your peace can rise and reshape them from within. Father, as we continue through this quiet unfolding where your presence softens every trembling corner of the inner world, let the anxious heart begin to sense that calm is not something it must earn, but something you freely pour into the places where fear has lived too long, because you know how worry coils like a tight rope around the mind, pulling thoughts into darker places, pressing against the breath until it feels thin and fragile. Yet you come with a gentleness strong enough to loosen what anxiety has tried to hold hostage. So draw near to the one listening now, the one whose fears appear without warning, whose chest tightens even in peaceful rooms, whose emotions rise like tides they cannot predict, and let your presence rest over them in a way that steadies their pulse and quiets the noise that has been echoing inside their thoughts. Allow your peace to seep into the cracks where worry seeps in, reversing the direction of the storm from the inside out, reminding them that they are not failing for feeling this way. They are simply human, deeply loved and not alone. And if in this tender stillness they feel even a faint desire to release one more anxious thought into your hands, let them follow that gentle pull, because each release becomes a place where your calm begins to anchor the soul more deeply than fear ever could. Father, as we move further into this quiet space where your presence feels like a soft refuge for trembling souls, let the anxious heart begin to notice how even the smallest breath taken in your nearness becomes steadier, because anxiety often compresses the spirit until it feels as though there is no room left to breathe, yet you gently expand those inner spaces with a peace that begins where human strength ends. So draw near to the one listening now, the one whose thoughts crowd together like voices speaking at once, whose fears blur the edges of clarity, whose chest tightens as though the world were pressing inward faster than they can push back, and let your calm seep into those overwhelmed places like warm light touching the coldest corners of the soul. Allow your presence to slow the rush within them, to ease the trembling beneath their breath, to remind them that they are not standing in this storm alone, and that no amount of inner chaos can push you away. And if in this gentle hush they feel a tender longing to trust you with just one more layer of their fear, let them lean into that quiet pull, because every moment they release even a fragment of anxiety becomes a moment where your peace rises stronger, steadier, and more deeply rooted within their spirit. Father, as we go even deeper into this sanctuary of stillness where your presence gathers gently around every burdened place within us, let the anxious heart begin to sense that the storm inside it is not stronger than the one who holds it, because while anxiety may twist thoughts into knots and make the world feel smaller than it is, your peace expands the inner horizon, reminding the soul that it was never meant to live confined by fear. So reach the one listening now, the one who carries silent tension in their shoulders, who hides the trembling behind practiced breaths, who longs for calm yet feels overwhelmed by the very emotions they wish they could quiet, and let your presence rest upon them like a warm covering that lifts what their strength alone could never loosen. Allow your peace to speak into the deepest layers of their worry, softening the edges of panic, slowing the rush of thoughts that once crashed like waves, easing the tightness beneath their ribs until they feel space inside themselves again. And if in this tender moment they sense a gentle longing to hand you another piece of what has been weighing them down, let them follow that subtle pull, because each fragment of fear surrendered creates more room for your calm to live and breathe within the fragile places of the heart. Father, as we continue through this unfolding quiet where your presence feels like a gentle tide washing over the most restless places of the soul, let the anxious heart begin to realize that peace is not the absence of difficult emotions, but the awareness that you are holding us, even while those emotions rise and fall, because anxiety often convinces the mind that it must fight alone. Yet, your nearness whispers a different truth, one woven with tenderness and unwavering care. So draw especially close to the one listening now, the one whose breath has felt shallow beneath silent pressure, whose thoughts sprint ahead of their strength, whose inner world feels stretched thin from carrying what no one else can see. And let your calm move through them with a slowness that steadies, a warmth that softens, a reassurance that sinks deeper than fear's trembling voice. Allow your peace to reach the hidden corners where worry hides, speaking softly into the tight spaces beneath their ribs, loosening the invisible tension their heart has held for far too long. And if in this sacred hush they feel a delicate stirring to trust you with even one more of the anxieties that have burdened them, let them lean into that gentle pull, because every quiet surrender becomes a place where your comfort grows roots and begins to reshape their inner landscape with healing only you can give. Father, as we move deeper into this tender atmosphere where your presence settles over every trembling thought like a quiet dawn softening the darkness, let the anxious heart begin to understand that even when fear rises without warning, your calm rises faster, wrapping the soul in a steadiness it could never create on its own. Because you do not wait for the storm to pass to bring peace. You enter the storm and change its language from within. So draw near to the one listening now, the one whose worries flare suddenly like sparks in the night, whose emotions swell until their breath feels thin, whose mind circles the same fears again and again until exhaustion becomes its own kind of ache. And let your peace reach them like cool water touching overheated skin, easing the tightness behind their ribs, slowing the rapid pulse of anxious thoughts, lifting the invisible weight that is pressed upon their spirit day after day. Allow your presence to speak gently into the places where fear has grown loud, reminding them that they are not powerless, not abandoned, not alone in this inner battle. And if in this sacred stillness they feel even a fragile desire to place just one more piece of their anxiety into your care, let them follow that tender pull, because every small surrender becomes a well of calm. You deepen inside them, teaching the heart to trust the steady rhythm of your peace more than the shifting noise of fear. Father, as we approach the quietest part of this journey where your presence feels like a soft glow resting on the most fragile places of the heart, let the anxious soul begin to recognize that healing is not a sudden moment, but a gentle unfolding, a gradual softening of the tensions that have lived beneath their breath for far too long, because you mend what fear has frayed not with force, but with tenderness that reaches deeper than worry ever could. So draw near to the one listening now, the one who has grown tired of their own thoughts, who feels drained by the constant battle inside their chest, who longs for rest yet fears surrendering control, and wrap them in a calm that moves slowly through their inner world like light spreading across a quiet morning. Let your peace speak into the heaviness behind their heartbeat, into the tightness that rises without warning, into the quiet panic that lingers even on good days, and remind them that they do not need to have everything figured out to be safe. They only need to let you hold what they cannot carry. And if in this gentle hush they sense a small longing to release even more of what has burdened them, let them lean into that tender pull, because each fear surrendered becomes another place where your steadying love takes roots and prepares their heart for the deep calm you are shaping within them. Father, as we arrive at this final breath of our journey through the quiet, let the anxious heart recognize how far it has already come, how much tension has slowly loosened under the warmth of your presence. How many fears have softened simply because you sat beside them in places no one else could reach? Because when anxiety tightens its grip, your calm rises gently, patiently, faithfully, teaching the soul that peace is not found by escaping the storm, but by leaning into the one who holds all things together. So draw close to the one listening now, the one who has poured out silent worries, who has lifted trembling thoughts into your hands, who has longed to feel safe in their own breath again, and wrap them in a tenderness that steadies the deepest parts of their being. Let your peace settle like a soft mantle over every rushing thought, over every tight space beneath their ribs, over every fear that once felt louder than hope, and let them sense, even now, that they are not standing in this moment alone. And if they feel a quiet longing to surrender the last pieces of their anxiety into your care, let them respond to that gentle pull, because here in this sacred stillness you complete what fear tried to undo, surrounding them with a calm that will continue unfolding long after this prayer ends. And now, Father, let your blessing rest upon them. May your peace guard their minds, may your presence steady their breath, and may your love be the calm that carries them through every storm. Amen.
Breathe for a moment. God is here. He wants to hear you. If this touched your heart, subscribe for more.